My son screamed it at me, a roar that shattered every memory I had of him. "You destroyed us! Leave!" I froze. My hands gripped the edge of the kitchen counter as if it could keep me tethered to a world that no longer wanted me. My grandson clutched his father's arm, glaring at me as though I were the villain in their lives. The smell of burnt coffee still hung in the air, sharp and suffocating, a cruel reminder of how quickly everything had turned upside down. I wanted to speak, to cry, to scream back, but the words lodged in my throat like stones. I had raised this boy, nursed him through fevers, wiped away scraped knees, whispered prayers in the dead of night for his safety. And now he spat venom at me. I remember that morning clearly. The sun had filtered softly through the lace curtains, casting golden patterns on the living room carpet. I had made breakfast, as I always did. Warm toast, fragrant tea, eggs just the way my son liked. I set the table, humming softly, thinking about nothing more sinister than the errands I had planned. I never imagined that by the time I finished washing the dishes, I would be plotting how to survive. My husband. God, he had been dead for nearly a decade, but his absence still echoed through the house. He had taught me patience, strategy, subtlety in the face of cruelty. Little did my family know, those lessons would come to life sooner than anyone expected. It had started subtly. My son, once gentle and bright, began changing after his marriage. His wife, my daughter-in-law, had arrived with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Polite, sweet, almost perfect at first, but beneath it was a glint I didn't notice until it was too late. She watched me cook, clean, and advised my son, and I thought nothing of it. Who could guess envy could look so patient? I remember the first time I noticed a flicker of tension. We were sitting down for Sunday dinner, the smell of roast chicken filling the room. My grandson told a joke, and my son laughed, but not at the joke. He laughed at me, a small, cruel smirk, the type you only notice in hindsight. I had dismissed it. I thought, he must be tired, it's just stress. But the seed of doubt had already planted itself. For months, the cracks widened. They began to undermine me subtly, throwing my advice aside, whispering in corners, "She doesn't understand us. Grandma just doesn't get it." And I felt it, the cold isolation, the creeping realization that I was no longer the center of my own family's universe. I watched them smile at each other across the table while I quietly cleared dishes, pretending I hadn't heard the cruel whispers. The day it happened, I was supposed to drive them to the store. Simple enough. The car was parked in the driveway, the air fresh with morning mist. I had noticed how my son's tone had changed over the past months, sharper now, impatient. But nothing could prepare me for the moment they revealed their true colors. "Mom, it's best if you just let us handle things," my son said, his voice icy. I, I began, but his wife cut me off with a tight-lipped smile that made my stomach churn. "You've done enough, Grandma," she said sweetly, but her eyes were knives. I felt a chill in my bones. Something was terribly wrong. My intuition screamed, and then I realized what they were planning too late. Gasoline, ignition, a car trap. They wanted me gone. And in that moment, a calm clarity settled over me. They underestimated me. They had forgotten one crucial detail. I had always been a woman who prepared for the worst, a woman who survived war, heartbreak, loss, and fire in its many forms. I wasn't just going to scream and die quietly. I reached into my purse, fingers brushing against the small key hidden there. My heart raced, but my mind was sharp. I would survive. I would not let them break me. Not now. Not ever. That morning, I had thought it was just a routine drive. By afternoon, I would be fighting for my life and plotting a revenge they couldn't even imagine. I never imagined that betrayal could feel like fire spreading through your veins, but that's exactly what it was. Burning, suffocating, relentless. My son, the boy I had raised with gentle hands and sleepless nights, was now the man who tried to destroy me. And his wife, oh, her face, sweet and cruel all at once, haunted me as they cornered me that day. It started with small things, dismissals at the table, laughs behind my back. "Mom just doesn't understand." they would whisper, eyes darting toward each other with that secretive smirk. I ignored it at first. I told myself, it's nothing. Children grow up. Couples have their moments. But it kept getting worse. Every small exclusion became a cut, every whispered word a dagger. I remember the first real sting. I had spent hours helping my grandson with a school project, guiding him through a history assignment, coloring maps, quizzing him on dates. I was proud, full of warmth. That evening, my son snatched the paper from my hands. "This isn't the way to do it," he snapped, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "Why are you interfering? Just let him do it our way." I stared at him, shock paralyzing me. Our way. My way had taught him everything up to now. My way had kept him from failing. How could this be happening? His wife smiled behind him, polite and perfect, but my gut screamed there was malice behind that smile. I could feel it like ice crawling up my spine. Then came the whispers, notes left where I'd find them. "You're in the way. Nobody needs you. Time to step aside." I confronted my son that night. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, voice trembling, trying to mask the fear with anger. "Doing what, Mom?" he said, too calm, eyes cold. "I'm just living my life. You always overstep. You overstep now, by trying to erase me from my own family," I cried, tears blurring my vision. "You're imagining things," his wife said softly, circling the kitchen like a predator. "We just want peace. Isn't that fair?" Fair. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Peace for them meant my obliteration. I had been a mother, a grandmother, a caretaker, and they wanted me gone. Quiet, forgotten, and I couldn't stop the tremor in my hands or the lump in my throat. It escalated quickly. One evening, I noticed my purse had been moved, my drawers rifled through. Personal letters, photographs, small keepsakes, gone. My heart pounded. I knew this wasn't just anger. This was planning. Calculated, cruel, cold-blooded planning. And then the final act of betrayal, the one I'd never see coming until the moment it nearly ended my life. "Mom, just drive," my son said with false patience, guiding me toward the car. My pulse raced. Something in my gut screamed danger, but I couldn't voice it without seeming paranoid. As soon as I was inside, the smell hit me. Gasoline. My stomach lurched. My hands froze on the steering wheel. "What? What are you doing?" I managed, voice tight with fear. His wife smiled, leaning in with mock sweetness. "We're just taking care of business, Mom. It's for your own good." I felt the terror curl in my chest. The car was small. There was no escape if the flames started. The air already thickened, heavy with smoke. I glanced at my grandson, terrified, and he looked away. He was loyal to his parents, not to me, my own flesh and blood. You can't do this," I whispered. "I raised you. And now we're moving forward," he snapped. "Without you." The lighter flicked in her hand. My breath caught. Panic clawed at my mind. I could feel the heat on my face before the fire even started. And that's when I remembered the lessons my husband had taught me. Calm in chaos, patience, the power of a plan. I moved, slowly, deliberately, hands trembling but eyes clear. My purse, the key hidden in the lining, slipped into my palm. I had prepared for emergencies, for situations just like this. But nothing could erase the betrayal, the humiliation of realizing my own son and daughter-in-law wanted me dead. I wriggled toward the window, ignoring the panic, the stench, the fear. My son laughed cruelly, thinking I was trapped, helpless. I could hear it, the sound of triumph in their voices, the cruel satisfaction. "You'll never get out," he said. "This is the end of you, Mom." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Action spoke louder than words. I found the edge of the window, pushed, wrenched, scraped skin on metal, and finally, freedom. Cold night air hit me like a wave. I tumbled onto the damp ground, lungs screaming, eyes stinging from smoke. They shouted, furious and incredulous, but it was too late. I was gone, alive, but not broken. Not yet. I watched the car, still filled with gasoline fumes, still ready to ignite, and my mind raced. Rage mixed with clarity. Every insult, every exclusion, every whisper of betrayal fueled me. I would survive, and they would pay. That night, soaked and shivering, I sat alone under the streetlight, the image of their smug faces etched into my mind. The betrayal was complete, total, irreversible. But I was alive, and that was enough to start planning. I remembered every slight, every manipulation, every cruel word. I replayed it like a movie, each scene sharpening my resolve. They thought they had destroyed me, but they had only awakened the part of me they never knew existed. And in that silence, cold and dark, I whispered to myself, they tried to burn me alive. They didn't know I had a plan. I sat on the damp curb long after the streetlights flickered off, watching the smoke curl from the driveway where my car had nearly become my coffin. Every muscle ached, my lungs burned, my heart pounded, not just from fear, but from rage. I had been humiliated, betrayed, just left for dead by the people I loved most. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark had ignited. I realized then that rock bottom isn't just pain, it's clarity. When nothing else remains, your mind sharpens. You see the truth without filters. My son and his wife thought they could erase me, remove me from their lives like I had been nothing. But I wasn't nothing. I was a grandmother, a woman who had survived decades of hardship, loss, and cruelty. I was going to survive this too, and more than that, they were going to regret ever underestimating me. The first step was observation. I returned home cautiously, lingering in the shadows, hiding behind curtains. I watched them, how they moved, how they whispered, how they laughed at their perceived victory. Every glance between them, every smirk, told me more than words ever could. They were arrogant, reckless, confident in their superiority. Perfect targets for a carefully executed plan. I spent nights rifling through old files, notes, letters, anything that could give me leverage. I remembered the safety deposit box my husband and I had opened years ago, a box they thought I had forgotten. Inside were documents, old financial records, evidence of shady dealings and debts that my son and his wife had accumulated while trying to appear successful. I smiled, cold and satisfied. Every small betrayal they had committed now had a price. But I needed more. I needed proof, witnesses, undeniable evidence. I contacted old friends, neighbors, anyone who had seen them lie, cheat, or manipulate. Some were hesitant at first, but once they realized I was serious and alive, they offered everything they had. Testimonies, photographs, recordings of conversations they thought no one else had heard. Every piece fit together, forming a tapestry of truth that would one day expose them fully. The emotional weight of betrayal pressed on me, but I let it fuel my strategy instead of my despair. Anger alone is useless. It burns quickly and then leaves you empty. Planning, patience, precision, those are weapons far stronger than fury. I felt the old thrill return, the one I hadn't felt since my husband had taught me to fight, to anticipate, to survive. I was alive and the game had just begun. I also had to be cautious. One wrong move, and I would be destroyed. I began small, planting seeds of doubt, testing reactions. A late-night call here, a carefully placed word there. Watching them squirm, watching them argue over things that seemed minor but revealed their cracks. It was intoxicating. The arrogance I had once feared was becoming their undoing. And then came the discovery that shifted everything. Hidden among the papers I had collected was a contract, one that revealed their most sinister intention. Not just to humiliate me, not just to erase me from the family, but to seize my home, my savings, everything I had spent a lifetime building. My blood ran cold and hot at the same time. They hadn't just tried to kill me. They had planned to strip me of my dignity, my security, my legacy. I held the papers in trembling hands, a mixture of fury and exhilaration coursing through me. In that moment, I understood that revenge wasn't just possible, it was inevitable, but it had to be clever. It had to hurt them where it counted, expose their cruelty publicly, dismantle the empire of lies they had built around themselves, and above all, it had to be undeniable. The night grew long, and I sat by the window, thinking. The rain tapped softly against the glass, a quiet rhythm that matched my pulse. I pictured the moments to come, their faces, the shock, the humiliation. I imagined standing before them, calm, composed, while everything they had worked for crumbled. I could almost feel their panic, their disbelief. I could almost hear them scream my name, not in love, but in fear. I whispered to myself, low and steady. They tried to burn me alive, but they forgot who I am. They forgot that nothing in life has ever truly defeated me. They forgot that I always have a plan. And in that moment, clarity struck like a bolt of lightning. I didn't need to rush. I didn't need to act hastily. Patience was my ally. Observation, my weapon. Every piece of evidence, every seed of doubt, every carefully crafted conversation would lead to the day when they would face the consequences of their cruelty. I felt a sense of calm settle over me, cold and sharp as steel. I had reached rock bottom, yes, but in that void I had found power. The kind of power that comes from surviving betrayal, from staring death in the face and walking away. The kind of power that turns humiliation into strategy and fear into a calculated plan for justice. The turning point had arrived. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a force to be reckoned with. And when the time came, they would see it. The woman they had tried to destroy would rise from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. I closed the papers, heart steady now, mind sharp. The game had begun. And the first move, though hidden for now, would set everything into motion. They would never see it coming. The day came quietly, deceptively calm, like the eye of a storm. I had spent weeks, no months, setting the pieces in place, arranging every detail so that the full weight of their betrayal would fall upon them in a way they could neither deny nor escape. Patience had become my ally, subtlety, my weapon. It began with the whispers. I had shared what I knew with friends, neighbors, even distant relatives, people my son and his wife trusted least to speak the truth. A single comment here, a raised eyebrow there, tiny seeds planted that made them doubt each other. They argued in whispers, then in voices raised. Paranoia crept in, insidious and unstoppable. The arrogance that had fueled their cruelty now became the chains that bound them. The first public strike came at a neighborhood gathering. My son, proud and pompous, strode in with his usual air of superiority, wife smiling smugly beside him. I arrived quietly, deliberately late, dressed modestly, carrying only my calm and my evidence. Conversations had been set in motion without their knowledge. I didn't need to speak much. The walls of truth themselves began to collapse around them. A friend I had confided in approached discreetly, handing over documents my son had believed destroyed, financial misdeeds, evidence of manipulation, even small lies that exposed his cruelty toward me. I smiled softly, almost pitying, as the information passed into the hands of someone who could make it public. Their faces tightened, masks slipping. "Mom," my son began, voice uncertain, scanning the room. But I didn't answer. I let silence speak, letting the weight of his deeds crush him quietly, before the eyes of those who mattered. His wife's smug grin faltered as whispers started circulating, questions asked in gentle tones that carried far. Everyone who mattered now knew pieces of their duplicity, and it only grew as more came to light. Then came the carefully orchestrated confrontation. I invited them, innocently, to my home under the pretense of reconciliation. A test, a trap, and a stage. My grandson sat quietly beside them, confused, innocent, but keenly aware that the air was different. I served tea, soft and aromatic, my hands steady. Every word I spoke was deliberate, controlled, measured. "You always thought you could erase me," I said softly, watching their reactions. That my love, my life, my patience meant nothing. But actions have consequences. My son stammered, searching for words, while my daughter-in-law's cheeks flushed with heat she couldn't hide. The documents were laid on the table, carefully arranged. Friends who had been witnesses to their deceit sat quietly, knowing glances exchanged, the subtle pressure of truth suffocating. The weight of exposure pressed down. They tried denial, tried excuses, but every lie had already been catalogued, every action remembered. Social circles whispered, allies withdrew, and the illusion of power crumbled like dry leaves in the wind. I watched the panic in their eyes, the disbelief, the quiet unraveling of their carefully built lives. It wasn't just about humiliation, it was justice. Each subtle humiliation was poetic. The car incident, the betrayals, the cruel jokes, they all came full circle. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't retaliate with cruelty. I simply let truth, patience, and strategy execute the revenge for me. I felt the power of clarity, the satisfaction of precision. They had tried to destroy me, and yet here they were, stripped of their arrogance, facing the consequences, exposed publicly, unable to manipulate or charm their way out. My grandson watched quietly, eyes wide, learning perhaps a lesson I hadn't intended, but that was unavoidable. Betrayal has weight, and truth always finds a way. By the end of the evening, they were broken, but not by my hands, by their own deeds, by their own cruelty, by the careful and relentless unraveling I had orchestrated. I sat quietly sipping tea, calm, unshaken, as the room carried the quiet hum of justice finally served. And when I finally spoke to my son, it was soft, measured, cutting in a way they would never forget. I survived your fire. You thought you could erase me. But look at yourself now. This is what happens when you betray those who love you. No yelling, no dramatics, just truth, the most potent weapon of all. Their humiliation was complete, their exposure irreversible, and I finally could breathe. I left that night with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. Not relief, not triumph, but balance restored. The world, once cruel and suffocating, felt right again. And for the first time since that terrible morning, I smiled without fear. The days that followed felt surreal, as if I were stepping into a world I had imagined but never truly believed could exist. My son and his wife had vanished into whispers and shame, their arrogance shattered, their cruelty exposed for all to see. I walked through my home with a calm I had not known in months, each familiar corner a reminder that I had survived, that I was still here. Neighbors, friends, and even distant family who had once doubted me now approached with hesitant smiles, quiet apologies, or words of admiration I had never expected. I listened politely, letting them speak, while inside a soft satisfaction bloomed. Not revenge for revenge's sake, but justice. Poetic, precise, undeniable justice. My grandson approached me one evening, hesitant, eyes wide, carrying a book he had once tried to hide from me. He didn't say much, but the gesture spoke volumes. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of trust. Slowly, carefully, the bond we had built over years began to heal, even as I remained cautious. I had learned that trust is not freely given. It is earned and sometimes painfully rebuilt. I spent time reflecting on what had happened, the betrayal, the humiliation, the fear. And I realized something important. The world would always throw cruelty, deceit, and danger at you. But how you respond defines who you truly are. I could have crumbled. I could have screamed. I could have reacted with blind fury. Instead, I chose patience, strategy, and measured action. And in doing so, I not only survived, I reclaimed my dignity. The house, once a scene of terror, became a sanctuary again. I tended to my garden, cooked meals I loved, invited friends over for quiet dinners. Life, simple and profound, began to bloom again. The fire that once threatened to consume me now seemed distant, almost symbolic of the past I had left behind. I thought of my husband, long gone but always present in lessons and memory. I whispered a quiet thanks, imagining his approving smile. He had taught me resilience, cleverness, and strength. I had survived not just because of circumstance, but because I had remembered everything he had ever shown me. And as I sat in my favorite chair one evening, watching the sun set in a brilliant blaze of gold and crimson, I understood the truth. Survival is not just physical. Survival is moral, emotional, and intellectual. It is rising from betrayal stronger, wiser, and unbroken. I smiled softly to myself, a private acknowledgement of my journey. They tried to burn me alive, I whispered into the twilight. But I rose from the ashes. And in that rise, I found not only justice, but peace. From that day forward, I walked carefully, yes, but also confidently. I knew the strength I possessed, the resilience I could call upon. I knew that no betrayal could ever erase my spirit, no cruelty could silence my voice, and no fire could destroy my soul. And that was the day I realized I was not just alive, I was unstoppable.